If you have colitis, then you need to understand this graph right here because it's going to show you exactly what is causing your symptoms. So this is from a book called The Human Colon. And essentially what they did is they did experiments on people with colitis whose symptoms were so bad their guts were hanging out of them, which sucks, but they got to see exactly how the intestines would respond to things. And so in this experiment right here, they're interviewing somebody for about an hour. It was a guy. And so they sit him down in the chair. These two lines represent, if the line goes up, then that means the tissue is becoming more red. It's becoming more inflamed. And then this other line represents how fast the intestinal muscles are moving. So at first they just bring him in and they sit him down and they're in complete silence. And this is just making him very uncomfortable. And it starts to become more red. Then they start to talk about his illness. And I guess he's pretty neutral about that. He's not really upset about it. And everything's kind of just flat lines, doesn't get worse. I guess it does get a little bit better. You see it goes down. Then they start talking about his last doctor, who he really didn't like all that much. And again, it becomes more red. And then they start talking about his uncle. And there was some sort of a thing where he was dating this girl. This book is from like the 1940s and the 50s. So things were like really old school back then. And I guess he was dating a girl, like he was like Romeo and he was dating Juliet, and his uncle was like, "How dare you disgrace our family's name," and blah, 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 blah. So they start talking about his uncle and his symptoms get worse. And, you know, they needed to cool things down because they wanted to like do the whole experiment. So they started talking about something pleasant that he enjoyed. Then they started talking about, you know, Juliet and his super red. Look, it's off the charts almost. And I guess while they were hooking up or something, a police officer ran in on them, and that's when he got in trouble and was like put into jail. And I know that sounds weird, but like this is in the 1940s and 50s that we're talking about. So it was like a big drama, big debacle back then. And by the end they had to stop because diarrhea was flying out of his stoma and there was blood coming out of his stoma. And then after this, they calmed him back down. You know, it'd be kind of unethical and mean to leave him in this bad state. And, you know, I focused a lot on diet when I had Crohn's and colitis. I had inflammation in the small and large intestine. And so at first, all I focused on was diet. I remember when I went on the specific carbohydrate diet and I just ate like mashed carrots for like a week straight, and just, you couldn't have any spices. This wasn't, like, it's just so boring. But when I started to get the stress in my life under control, that's when I got better. But you can't, like, you're always going to have stress in your life. You can't just get rid of all stress. That's not possible. This guy had stress in his life. His symptoms did not start until this thing with the girl happened. That was the conflict shock that put his gut into overdrive and made his, you know, and put him in the situation that he is in. This exact same thing happened to you. You might not see it yet because you just haven't looked and you haven't been aware, but it is there. And we have to get better. This is the only way to get better. Some people do this just naturally and they get better and they don't have bad symptoms. It's just like a natural part of life. They aren't traumatized by their trauma, but this person was. And this person, this happened over the course of like 5 years. They interviewed these people. He did not get better until they noticeably saw, like, while they're interviewing him about the girl, you know, he, like, every time they talk about the girl, he'd be like, oh, I hate her. She sold me out. She doesn't love me anymore. Screw her, you know. And it took him like 2 years to finally be like, yeah, whatever. I got a new girlfriend now. I don't care. So this is the only way to get better. You're wasting your time doing anything else. I go into more detail about what I did and how I help people get better in my free webinar.